Creativity is not the finding of a thing, but the making something out of it after it is found. James Russell Lowell. Welcome to Deep Dive Creatives, a podcast that explores creativity. I'm David McGinnis, host of Deep Dive Creatives. The mission of this podcast is to encourage the spirit of creativity. And in that vein, here are 3 ways you can be an encourager of creativity. 1, subscribe to this podcast. That helps to promote this podcast, which in turn can help promote people's creativity. 2, tell your friends about the podcast. And 3, tell your story about your creative endeavors. Also, leave a comment. Tell me about your creative journey, and I'll tell your story. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube, there's an interactive menu in the episode description that allows you to jump to any of the topics discussed in this episode. You can also listen to the podcast on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Meet Kristen Grainger.
Bluegrass has this way of taking a really horrible murder and putting it to it's terrifying how they do that. And that is not my style.
Kristen is the voice of True North, an Americana string band that hails from the Pacific Northwest. Kristen is the primary architect of the band Songwriting. The Bluegrass Situation, a website and the world's largest community for American roots music, culture, and lifestyle, describes Kristen Grainger as one of the women who wrote our 2020 soundtrack alongside Dolly Parton and Brandi Carlile. Kristen has collected an impressive list of songwriting awards at events like the Telluride Bluegrass Festival, Wildflower Arts and Music Festival, Merrill Fest, Kerrville, and Wintergrass. She also won the Common Grounds Acoustic Roots Songwriting Contest in 2020 with the moving and impactful song Ghost of Abuelito. She will go into detail about that song later in this podcast. The long list of awards is a testament to Kristen's skill as a storyteller. And storytelling has been a fascination of hers since early childhood.
As a kid, I was fascinated with stories and writing and books and words. And my mother gave me a book, I think when I was 10 or 11, that was called Words at Play. And it was all about how different wording and how the English language developed to be where it is today and how our lexicon continues to expand. And so I was a writer in high school and college. I was a creative writing major, and I also loved music. I could harmonize at a really young age and loved the idea of singing with people. Always was in a band from age 15 on. But I never wrote a song until I was 36. You'd think as a creative writing major with poetry as my focus and being a musician also playing 2 instruments, I would have put those 2 together sooner, but yet I did not. So I'm not sure how all that came together. I think in my mid-30s I decided I had something to say. And up until then, it was mostly just palavering, and I really liked other people's songs and didn't think I could write anything as good as that. So it just took a little bit of life experience to put me in the right space.
The formation of Kristen Grainger and True North started when Kristen met Dan Wetzel, a talented musician and songwriter in his own right.
So Dan and I met playing in our respective bands. He was in a bluegrass band called New Moon, and I was in the Bitch Creek Nymphs, which was 3 women singers who really loved that 3-part harmony. And we met the night our bands opened for each other, and we continued to cross paths that way. And then he played a little mandolin on one of the albums we were making, and then said to me, "My band's breaking up." And I said, "My band is probably not long for this world either," because everyone knows a band is just a dysfunctional family without the unconditional love. So we decided we wanted to play and sing together, just to play and sing, and discovered that the sum of our parts, basically the total of our talents, was best manifested when we were playing and singing together. We had this great rapport instantly, and our voices meshed really nicely, and we would sing until 2 and 3 in the morning. We just couldn't get enough of it. We already songs that we knew, songs that my band played, or songs that his band played that I'd heard, and found that real magical alchemy that happens when 2 really determined and good musicians get together. So we played as a duo for a couple of years, and then we went up to Portland and heard a bluegrass band that was members of the band he used to be in. And they were really good, and they were super fun music, and the crowd really liked it. And I said to Dan, how hard would it be to put together a bluegrass band? And he said, I can have it put together by Sunday. So he put together 5 musicians. It was 2 of us plus 3 others, and playing bass and guitar, bass, mandolin, dobro, fiddle, and we had a wonderful banjo player too that would sit in with us occasionally. And the thing about bluegrass musicians is they're like Legos. You can plug them in here, and then that's one band, and then you pick them out and put them in, and everybody's in two or three bands. And so we really just played a few things here and there, but it was really enjoyable. Everybody could sing, and we had a great rapport. And I had decided that I could write a few songs, so I added those into the mix. They were adaptable to bluegrass, but really were more folk Americana, the way you think of it, in terms of story songs, but also not the same kind of structure as bluegrass. And so we ended up getting booked at festivals that were both folk festivals and bluegrass festivals, and made 2 or 3 albums at first, and then the band reconfigured a couple of times, and we've made 8 albums altogether. Mostly originals written by me, a few by Dan, and then a couple covers. We always throw a cover or 2 in there just for fun. We try to pick them carefully.
Well, as Kristen unpacks her thoughts about creativity, you will be inspired by her story and her deep desire to impact the world around her through her music and storytelling abilities. As a result, you will be challenged to continue, or perhaps begin for the very first time, your own journey down the wild and untamed path of creativity. Let's dive in. So let's talk about how you define creativity.
Well, creativity to me is a sense of a problem. So an issue or a problem or an experience. And I mean the word problem like a math problem. It's not a real problem, but it's a thing that needs to be resolved, right? It needs to be solved. And so I come up against a story or an experience or a feeling or even a phrase that seems like it bears expansion. It would benefit from being brought out and burnished and explained or illustrated for people in a way that anybody could engage with. So it's a song, it's a poem, it's an essay, it's a short story, because these are the things that I write. I write songs, but I also write a number of other things. So I see creativity as the ability to take an experience and resolve it in a way that is artistic, in a way that other people can relate to it and experience it.
Talk about your creative process.
I tried to think about songwriting and writing poetry and writing short stories or essays as kind of different rooms on the same floor. You know, the elevator takes you there, and then you decide which room you're going to go into. And for me, my process is to again identify this experience, this feeling, this problem in a broader sense that I want to resolve or I want to explore, and through that exploration resolve it in a way that's artistic. And that is, for me, I read a story in the newspaper, I eavesdrop on elevators, I encounter a situation in my own life, a family experience, or a friend comes to me with a problem, but it's something that wakes up something inside of me that says, this would be a good song, poem, story, whatever. And often my songs are story songs. So for example, the song I wrote called The Ghost of Abuelito, that song I wrote in 2018 after the news came to light that the United States had adopted as a formal policy to dissuade people from coming across the border to seek asylum, which is legal. To dissuade them from doing that, they would separate families. So children would be separated from their parents, and there was no explanation and there was no contact. And that came to light, and then it came to light that children had died in state custody and that they were suffering from neglect and a lack of services and care in those settings. Those settings were not intended for children. And one of my friends was directly involved in the litigation around that. So I had a lot of information about that, and I couldn't sleep. I was sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe that that my country was doing this, and that 8 kids died in the period of time where that song was written. I'm sure more have since died. And it was hard for me as a human being, as a parent. I mean, you don't have to have a kid. You were once a kid. You know what kids are like. You know how important families are to children. That I had to do something with these feelings. Again, a problem I sought to resolve. So I wrote down, for one, I read about the kids in custody and the stories that they told, their own stories that they shared with the inspectors from the government. And I read those accounts online because they're available to read. They've been redacted. But you read those, and they're so compelling, and they're so terrifying and saddening. It makes me so disappointed in how our country decided to deal with these issues, that I took and made an amalgam of those stories and turned that story into a song. And it's about a brother and sister who are trying to cross the border with their mother, and their mother is taken into custody, and then they are separated and taken to a different place. And the 2 kids are young, and 11 and 7, and they don't know what happened, and they don't have any sense of what's going to happen to them. And they've been told by their grandfather, who passed away a long time ago, that America will always take you in. America is the place that you can go that's safe. The Statue of Liberty is invoked in the song. There's a goddess that guards the gates, and she doesn't care where you've been. She wants you to come in.
Miguel, my brother, he's 11. I am Alma, I am 7. Old enough to remember home. The sound of gunfire in the night, an ordinary part of life. At least the only life I've ever known. Miguel refused to cry the day headed north from Ecuador, USA. Even when we gave our dog away, even after throwing stones to make her stay. He says the ghost of Abuelito comes to him when he's afraid. His spirit comes down from the stars, still smells of coffee and cigars. And when he is there, Miguel is brave. Abuelito wanted it that way.
As a result, the song doesn't really resolve. The boy becomes more and more withdrawn, and the little girl learns to take care of all the other little kids in the situation, and by lying to them and saying that your mother's coming for you, don't worry, she's on her way. And so that's the fact that the song does not resolve, does not have a happy ending or an ending really that you even know what happens, was an important part of that, because we at that time, and even still, we don't know how these children are tracked or cared for, or if they're reunited with their parents or not. So that song was a particularly powerful song that people wanted to hear, and that they wanted me to play live in various places, and that had a life of its own. But that's kind of how my process works, is I try to find something that I find compelling enough that it's a short story I want to share, and that people can access a really difficult issue, a complicated and thorny and multifaceted and emotional issue. If you read about it in the newspaper, you just might put it down and say, I just can't face that. That's so awful. I don't even want to know. And this song allows you to take it in as just a small but powerful thing. And that's, to me, resolving a conundrum artistically.
Abuelos hate to see us suffer. They're out searching for our mothers, and they'll bring our mothers soon. Abuelos hate to see us suffer. They're out searching for our mothers, and they'll bring our mothers soon.
The most frequently asked question in my songwriting workshops is, do you write the words or the melody first? And frankly, I write them together, because I'm already thinking, as I'm writing the song, What's the mood? What's the vibe? What's the rhythm going to be? Is it going to be a ballad? Is it going to be something upbeat? Bluegrass has this way of taking a really horrible murder and putting it to it's terrifying how they do that. And that is not my style, but I did notice that murder ballads tend to be pretty upbeat, and I'm not sure what that means. But for this song, for that particular song, for Ghost of Abuelito, which is a very gripping story and a very sad situation, I wanted it to be about children, so I didn't want it to be this dirge. I didn't want it to be a ballad, a big ballad. I wanted it to be a song that would be a stream of consciousness, the way a child thinks, the way a child experiences the world and sees the world. But I was thinking about, too, in order to get it, you have to have some words. You can't have all the words, because that's the great thing about the song, is it provides constraints. But you're up against the structure. So you have to distill a story from a narrative to verse, to a rhythmic poem, basically, and distill and distill and distill, so you get the most powerful ideas in the fewest amount of words, and that they work in the rhythm. So I try to do all of that at the same time, because if you came up with the rhythm first, the story might not, you have to jam it in there. You can tell songs that have that they've really tried to get that word in there. They have to have that word in there. That's not how I want to operate. So I want the song, I want it to feel natural to the listener. Like they just want to hear the story, and the melody conveys that gently and easily, so that if they can take it in and not go, I can't, it's too hard, but it's that last line, the abuelos hate to see us suffer. They're out searching for our mothers, and they'll bring our mothers soon. And that is a lie. And that's I wanted that line to really land, so that people could see the fallacy in this whole thing. And that's an important part of that melody, is that everything works together to convey it powerfully to the person, but gently. So I think it was John Lee Hooker said in one of his songs, last night late I heard Mom and Papa talking. I heard Mama tell Papa, let that boy boogie woogie. It in him, and it got to come out. And that's how I feel. I'm like, yes, that is exactly, it's in there and it's got to come out. And not all songs are great, There's a lot of dogs in there too. But I love the idea of things kind of roiling around in there, and something comes to the surface, and I have to work on it until it's either done or it needs to just be put aside, because I can't, because it's not quite ready to be finished. I love the idea of that, but when it's happening, it's quite unbearable. I mean, it's really, it's worrisome. It's like, it's stressful to have that constantly like in there. So I guess my most favorite part of the process would have to be when I get the first recording of it. Like, that's what we usually do, is I write a song, and then I arrange it on the piano, then Dan arranges it for guitar, and then we go downstairs to our little makeshift recording studio, and we record it. And then I can listen to it and figure out what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be tweaked, or that this is a good place for harmony, or here's where I hear the fiddle, or however it works. That first recording is just very gratifying. It doesn't mean it's done or even that it's good, just that it's someplace that from here we can do something with it.
What are your sources of inspiration?
The world is full of joy and triumph and grief and loss and problems to solve, and all kinds of stories. They're everywhere. We're surrounded by it. And because of the internet, you can't get away from it. I mean, there's no shortage of things to talk about and things to write about in the world. And I always am amazed if someone says that they just don't know where to get any ideas. And prompts are great. I mean, you can use songwriting prompts to help you too. But for me, it's just paying attention. So if I'm paying attention, there's no way I could ever run out of material. I might not might get more skilled at conveying it, or I might get less skilled over time at conveying it. But there's no shortage of ideas and material out there. You just have to pay attention.
How do you deal with dry spells?
Several years ago now, Dan's father and my father passed away within a few months of each other. It got to where we were afraid to answer the phone because it was right after that I had nothing to say. I felt numb. I felt numb for months and then just really angry. And the material that I wrote during that time was not really usable or good. It was just a way to get what's in me out of me. And I think that not necessarily a dry spell, but more of a lava spell, where I was just really didn't have anything to say, and then was just really angry and sad. So I'd say that was a period of time that I didn't produce anything very good, or not very much of it either. But I think what brings you out of it is when your grief turns to gratitude, when your anger turns to acceptance. These things that's natural. You don't ever get over it. You don't ever forget, but you're able to manifest those feelings differently. And it kind of, it was spring again in my muse, and I was able to produce things again and produce some of my best writing in the period that followed that. When you have something that isn't working, what I do is, and what I advise my songwriting classes to do, is to set it aside. You should never throw something out, because if you throw something out, you've rejected it, and as if it has no merit for any purpose, when in fact, I've taken things that didn't go anywhere and cannibalized them for something that is going somewhere. We were in the studio in Eugene a few years ago making an album, making Open Road, Broken Heart, and that album. And in the middle of recording a different song for that record, I found the resolution to a song that had been sitting on the back burner for years, like 5 years. So it just took a while for me to figure it out. I don't even know what magic happened in there that connected those dots, but it really did make a difference. I think the best thing you can learn is that nothing is entirely useless. Nothing is bad in these situations. What you can use, you may not be able to use now, but maybe you can use it later.
What motivates you to create?
I think the way I was raised, and the way I grew up reading and listening and paying attention, and that I've always wanted to create things, and I created poems for a long time. I think I wrote my first poem when I was 8, and my mom kept it. It was not very long. It goes like this. Spider, spider in my cider, how is it you float so well? Your little arms can stretch no wider, or are they legs? I cannot tell. So I've always had this thing where I wanted to say something, I wanted to create something. It usually involved words. And I did little artsy craftsy things, but I'm really not creative like that, artistically that way. But I know other people that they can't express themselves in words very well, but they are amazing artists that can create visually what they're feeling. So until I run out of feelings, I become numb, I become insensate from the neck up. I can't imagine not paying attention and wanting to explore the stories around what I'm seeing and resolve it in a way that's artistic.
Do you have creative mentors?
Oddly, I think I had more people telling me I couldn't do things than I had telling me I could do things. I think Dan probably was my best mentor in a lot of ways. My dad, I love my dad. He was born deaf in one ear, and so music was not a big thing to him. He was a scientist and an inventor and a surgeon. And so when I was pretty young, he said, I just want to tell you, you don't have any talent. If you did, we'd know by now. And so I thought I was never going to be any kind of a musician or a songwriter or anything like that. And he meant well. He meant that he thought he was saving me from a life of poverty and disappointment and exploitation or whatever. I think he meant well, but it did put a serious stick in the spokes. I didn't really want to. I didn't really want to pursue this in any meaningful way. I was mostly content singing other people's songs for a long time. Dan Wetzel is my husband, and he is incredibly inspirational. I didn't write my first song until he and I started playing and singing together. And I don't know what it is about him. I think it's because he's incredibly gentle and calm, and he creates a real safe space around him, and you don't feel, stray cats find Dan. Like, little old ladies and babies love Dan. He just something about his warmth and his quietness attracts people who feel vulnerable, and he really did make it possible for me to create things. And the minute I would share a song with him, he wanted to learn it, and he wanted to sing along, and he wanted to know all about it. And that kind of confidence in my ability was, I think, missing for a long time. Somebody to say, you're actually really good at this. You really should do this, and I want to help you do this. And that was a huge inspiration for me. And to feel like no matter how crappy the song might be, initially he's like, let's do it. It's going to be great. He's always, and it's not fake. He really does believe that. I'm in terms of songwriters, existing songwriters, I was always really inspired by. Daunted is a good word that I use with Patty Griffin and Ricky Lee Jones, the people that can convey so much through their voice, just the simplest words, but also write very complex songs that come off very memorable and simple because of how they deliver them. I remember that when I heard Patty Griffin's Living with Ghosts album, I thought, I can't do this. How can I possibly ever do this? Because it's so good, and it's just her and her guitar and her voice. And I think if something that good can move me, that simple can move me that much, that's the aspiration, is to not have a orchestra behind you or a bunch of studio tricks to make it sound a certain way, but just to be who you are. Because to me, authenticity is the only thing an artist has. You have your authenticity. I've been in a lot of songwriting contests, national songwriting contests at Telluride and at Merlefest and Kerrville and Wildflower and Wintergrass, and I know that I listened to the contestants, and a lot of the women in the contest would want to sound like the latest pop singer. So Ingrid Michaelson was the thing when I was at Telluride. So every woman singer had adopted that little lilt, that little beautiful yodel thing that she does, and it's beautiful, and I love it, and I wish I'd done it first because it's so good. But I know it isn't me. I know that that is not the voice that I was born with, and all I can do is sing my songs my way and believe that it's enough. And if the judges don't pick it, that's okay. At least it's absolutely 100% authentic.
What is your creative philosophy?
I believe that expression makes us human, right? Expression and artistic expression makes us humane. And we just need humanity, and we need mercy, and we need connection, and that art provides that for people. If it's writing, if it's songs, if it's studio art, that is why people do this, is because they are looking to connect, and they're looking to engage, and they're looking for a way to express their humanity, their humanness. And that is absolutely why I do it. And I feel that. And I know from people's reactions when I play songs for them that it's getting in there, that it's reaching them, and that it means something to them. And that is the most gratifying part of being an artist. And again, I would say authenticity is all you have as an artist. And that's definitely my philosophy. It is what it is, but it's mine. It's not, AI. It's not another kind of me imitating somebody that I admire. Imitation might be the sincerest form of flattery, but it isn't art. And that's the important thing that I took away from all of those national songwriting contests is, that person can really sing. She sounds exactly like Ingrid Michaelson, but it's not Ingrid Michaelson. And of course, that's why she didn't win, is because she wasn't really bringing anything new. And that's the goal, is to be bringing something that people haven't really heard before.
What are your creativity goals?
My goal is to keep being able to do it. I'm whatever's in there, I hope it doesn't run out. I don't think creativity is like a battery that runs down. I feel like the more I do it, the more I have to give. I don't know that it's all great. So my goals are to continue to pay attention and be aware of all of the great human stories around this world, and to be the person who goes out and observes the world and then reports back. That's my goal, is to be able to keep doing that.
Keep the river on your right. You can't go wrong with the river on your right. And if you've lost your way and you're running out of daylight, keep the river on your right. Keep the river on your right. Keep the river on your right.
The threats to creativity are things like not funding art for kids, not funding music programs for kids, seeing art as ephemeral or decoration, not supporting these things that are really the emblems of our existence. And so if you downplay them, if you devalue them, then it makes it impossible for a lot of artists to live and continue to make their work. That's absolutely the truth. For example, there are lots of people who want to hire musicians for things, and they'll pay the florist, they'll pay the caterer, but they won't pay the musicians. They'll say, but it's great exposure. And as Dan would say, people die of exposure every year. Well, I guess the thing is, don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. It's just ridiculous. Anybody can write a song. Maybe it's not a great song, but it's a start. There's no doubt about it that it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, but it is. If you feel like you have something to say, you probably do. So start with something simple and go from there.